we win, or strength through joy, or make America great again. Oh my. What do we make Jesus great again? Well, hey everyone. On that note, we're back. It's time once again to push the pulpit aside and have some uncommon, courageous conversations. It is fall of 2024, and we've just come through a crazy election season, or maybe we're still in it. I don't know. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pulpit Aside. I'm Pastor Coy.
And I'm Pastor Jesse.
And we are excited to not only be back again for another season, but to get the opportunity to share with all of you who are our listeners, the Pulpit Aside.
Yeah.
These hard, uncanny, courageous, uncommon, yet necessary conversations.
It's been a minute.
It has been a minute.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You look well.
Thanks. You look good, too.
I'm trying.
You look like you haven't aged at all.
That's because other than days, I'm still the same age as I was last time we did a podcast.
It feels like a long time. It is a crazy season we've been in, though.
It has been.
You doing all right?
Yeah, with the election, and now the results are all in. And actually, it didn't take as long as I think some people thought it would.
I wondered if it would be drawn out.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
We're here. The country didn't implode.
It did not.
I thought it might.
I wasn't sure, but I got to tell you, come Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I was out of town, so I wasn't here at home. But even when the results came in, the type of emotion and or commotion I thought we might experience, regardless to who won, I just felt like it was quiet afterwards.
It was kind of. But there was a lot of emotion.
I think there was a lot of emotion. I just don't know that it was expressed as much as I thought it would be. And maybe it's because
riots.
Right.
Maybe
because leading up to it, it was so much.
Yeah,
people talking and talking and talking. And then once the results were in, no more ads, not as much media coverage.
Right.
Okay. People went back to work. And so, but I'm sure there was emotion.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it expressed like I thought I would.
I would have to agree. So, we're going to start our season 3 here. Episode 1 was talking about stuff that may be a little spicy for some people. I don't know. But we got to talk about this. So let me tell you what gave me the interest to get our first episode underway. I was listening to another podcast, and this pastor was talking about, he's in a big city down south. He's a white guy. He said this pastor from another church, predominantly black, large church, called him out of the blue, I think soon after the election, because he said, we need to pray. And the guy says, why? He said, well, my people are scared. And I was like, we need to talk about that.
So wait, this was a podcast?
Yeah.
And was the white pastor on and the black pastor?
No,
or
it was just
somebody
the white guy
telling,
talking.
So the white guy was
telling the story.
So the white guy who got called was telling the story.
Yes.
So what was his response when his pastor friend who was black said, we need to pray, my people are scared?
Okay,
What was his?
I wish he would have shared the whole conversation. He didn't. But the black pastor that called him was saying, we need to pray for unity.
Sure.
He said, because a lot of my people are scared. And that's where he left the conversation in what he was talking about.
So he didn't give any
No,
lead
he
into
did
what he
not.
was
He
thinking
did
when he
not.
heard that, or
No.
Because I would have been curious as to what his thought process, even there was no actual conversation.
Well, I think
afterwards.
he pretty much said, I don't understand that.
Okay.
I think he said that, and the other pastor, I'm sure, explained, but he did not give us the details of the conversation. But I have understanding because I have friends who are not white, and I understand that
you got pastor friends who are not white.
Yeah, like the one right here. How come you ain't call me?
Because I'm not scared.
Okay.
No, and I think Kingdom Life is a mixed church.
Right, I know that.
So
love it.
I think, being the fact that we do have about a 35 percentage of our numbers who are white, some of the political issues that other churches are dealing with in the respective context,
You're right.
predominantly black, predominantly white, we are navigating those concerns a little bit differently because we're all worshiping together already.
Yeah.
And in this case, white and black, I think there are some members in our church who are black and Republican, as well as there are some members who I think are white and Democrat, as well as the typical norm within the church, as far as oftentimes those who are black align with Democratic Party, those who are white within the church usually align with the Republican Party, from what it appears to be.
If you want to stereotype.
Yes, if you want to stereotype, yes.
So I can't believe that the people in your congregation, though, are without opinion. So how do you?
No, they have opinions.
This is not what we were planning to talk about. But since you brought it up, how is this working out? How do you guys walk this out as a multicultural congregation?
Good question.
Because it can be so divisive.
I think for us, it comes up more in our smaller circles. Mm-hmm. So like in our Monday men's Bible study, a month, 2 months out, a couple of our men brought it up before the election.
Oh.
A couple of our men, we were just talking, brought it up. And you could tell the emotion and the passion in the room for a couple individuals who were leaning one way as opposed to the other. And even their views about, I'll just be blunt, about now President-elect Trump. Very much, you do not want this man in office. And so as that comes out, I know that I have other people in the room who don't quite understand all of why these couple individuals may feel this way or this strongly. And so it gives opportunity to talk through some of the reasons why this may be the case. And then I constantly remind them in that moment, hey, don't forget, we're brothers.
Yeah.
We are brothers. We all believe in Jesus. We are on the same team. And we have to learn how to not fight one another, but we have to better learn how to express ourselves to one another, realizing we're fighting the same enemy.
Yeah.
And so.
No, great. That's so good, too. So to have healthy conversations where you can build understanding.
Yeah.
And that was before the fact. So great setup. Because now here we are. And Trump has been elected, although he's not officially in the office seat yet. And we're here. And there are communities of people who are scared by the fact that this is our reality now.
Sure.
And I've seen, other folks saying that their community's been grieving in the wake of this election. And I think there's probably a lot of people, probably a lot of white people, that don't understand why. Can you help bring some understanding for our friends who may not get it?
Well, that is the goal of today's.
That's a big question.
That is a big question. That's the goal of today's one of the goals of today's podcast. One of the main goals. And as I said off air, I'm going to say on air, I want to help, but keep in mind, I don't represent all black people's voices.
No, you're just one.
I'm just one. Mm-hmm. And there are many black people voices today. Right. There are many black people voices today, many women today, many individuals who parts of their community are afraid, yet they themselves voted for now President-elect Donald Trump and are excited that he's in office. And they have their motivations and their reasons for that.
Sure.
And so
it's a mixed bag all around.
It's a mixed bag, right. So even as I'm expressing certain things, I'm expressing a perspective, but a perspective that either in some ways agrees with certain perspectives or at the very least understands why that perspective is there.
Looking for understanding.
Sure, absolutely.
Why would people be scared now or grieving in the wake of an election? This election, right, because they grieve. I think we grieve over every election when our guy doesn't win. Sure. I think, if I'm honest, I don't take it all that deep, ever.
Me neither.
Personally.
Me neither.
So
So for you and I, whoever wins, God is still sovereign.
Right, that's where I'm at.
And when I say that's his choice for this season, it doesn't mean that he's on their side. It just means, for whatever reason, in his plan, this person needs to be in office as part of executing his ultimate plan.
Yeah.
So you're right. So neither one of us are really grieved by it nor worried about it. But why would people be grieved by it? Some of the reasons why would be people are grieved or they're afraid because as much as policy is important with governing a nation, the people who are in place to execute the policies are equally as important.
Definitely
Right?
matters.
And I've heard lots of Christians say policy over person.
Yeah.
Policy
I've
over
heard that.
person. And I just started to tell Christians and understand that if your policies are bad, true, that means the running of a country or an organization will be bad. But if the person who you put in place is bad, I don't care how good your policies are. That person who's put in place, if they do not execute those policies that are good in the manner that they're supposed to be executed, then because they got the power, then they will trample on those policies and do what they want. And I think that right now, President-elect Trump has demonstrated at times through his own character that he will go against what we have usually associated with are the norms or the policies put in place. If he doesn't like them per se, I mean, he really may fight against them.
Yeah.
And I think as a businessman, it's much easier to do that when you run your own company.
Yeah.
Because
you're in charge.
Yeah, you're in charge. And I think the president of the United States is in charge, but they're not totally in charge. They are kind of a figurehead.
Yeah. Or there's supposed to be, checks and balances on
Yes.
that.
Yes. And I think with President Trump, sometimes as you watch him from a distance, so we're not up close, but from a distance, it would appear at times like he does what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he puts people in places who are loyal to him to help him do what he wants to do. That can create some fear, some grief.
Say more.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, so let me give you an example. Policy that's in place. The preamble to the Constitution says this: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
This is the preamble to the Constitution,
Right.
Constitution which will dictate how we are governed.
Sure.
In this written document, policy, it says that as a citizen of the United States, for the most part, I mean, it doesn't say citizen here, but that's kind of the idea here. But specifically, they are saying we believe that this truth is self-evident. All men are created equal. Well, that's what the document says, but the practice of slavery. And then at times, the additional maybe state laws to kind of, skirt around this particular constitutional preamble that was supposed to govern the entire country. But because they wanted slavery at certain points of time, you had to somehow now either just dismiss this idea or put in place another policy as a state that says, oh, well, black people are 3/5 of an individual.
Right.
Well, at the core of how our country is run, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, because all men are created equal. Now, eventually, this will help to not only bring an end to slavery, but to deal with, the evils that took place in Reconstruction, Jim Crow / black codes, even up until, the idea of discrimination in housing and lending that took place, well into 70s, 80s, and probably sometimes still taking place in certain places today in our country. So
You're talking about systems that were oppressive.
Well, I'm saying, yes, oppressive systems were created, but created in the midst of a policy that clearly said we're all created equal. And we all have the right to the same thing: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, freedom. Unless we do something illegal,
right,
that would restrict your freedom.
Right.
When we think about the black codes or the Jim Crow laws that were put in place in southern states,
So relate this, though,
okay,
to President-elect Trump.
all right.
Where's the connection?
The connection is here. Sometimes the person that you put in power may have the opportunity, or is now given the opportunity, not to exercise certain policies or procedures that we may all be in agreement with. But this person also has the opportunity to put some things in place that, because they now do have the power, they can create a policy where it will directly affect you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll give you an example. This morning, watching the news, the question that they threw out there is, it looks like President Trump may use the military to force all illegal immigrants, like a deportation. Mm. From a legal standpoint, part of my mind says, well, if they're here illegally, then okay. But if I'm an illegal immigrant coming into the country, and it's a bunch of us, mm-hmm. whether we have snuck in, mm-hmm. been, brought in, there's a fear here that you now legitimately will have, mm-hmm. because our president-elect is talking about, we're going to make sure it's a deportation that takes place. Right. And so if I'm in a community where for a while I've been able to kind of move and still get some things in this country, even if it's illegally, for what I've been able to do it, I'm now afraid because I could be sent back home by force. Right. By force.
So I feel like what I've heard in why Trump and his rhetoric makes people of color so uncomfortable is, the slogan, "Make America Great Again," or sometimes even the phraseology that some Christians will use of like, we need to go back to whatever sort of imaginary golden age of when Christian morality was the rule of the day, and what I think folks who are not minorities don't see or hear in that phraseology is for, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but for a person of color, you're thinking, well, what are we trying to go back to? Your 50s or 60s when there was segregation, mm-hmm. it harkens to mind oppression. It doesn't sound great. Right. Right? Is that what is being heard when Trump and his allies will say, "Make America Great"? Is that what people are hearing? Is that why they're afraid?
Absolutely.
And when you call to mind, you're talking about even constitutional era, this document has a great statement of truth, right? Yes. That is truth, and if we abide by that, that will make life great for everyone.
Absolutely.
If it's equally applied.
Right.
But it has not been, or was not, especially in the earlier days.
And
right?
at times still not.
Right.
It's still not being applied
We're
equally.
Not working for the flourishing of everyone.
Right.
And so you could say, so when someone says, usually a white person, we're founded on Christian principles by godly men, what people of color are thinking, really? Because they were enslaving people.
Right. Right.
That doesn't sound godly.
It doesn't. It
doesn't feel very Christian to build your nation on the backs of other human beings.
That you've stolen, which clearly goes against what Deuteronomy tells us to do when God's talking to you. Don't steal people. So it's even different if you go and have a war and we win and we take you as captive. That was allowed.
But still.
But they were stealing people, forcing them into slavery, and then built the theology around it. Oh, you're the seed of Ham. And so that's why you are subservient to us.
Right.
So yeah. And part of
that's what strikes fear.
That is,
right?
It does strike
fear. Can we just say it?
And
put it out there?
Fear. And part of the reason why it strikes fear is because.
Is that what we're going to go back to?
Well,
is that what's going to be made great? I mean, that's what a lot of, I can say it, I'm a white guy, right? A lot of white people don't hear that. That's not what they're thinking.
That is not what they're thinking.
And yes, and we can talk more about that.
Well, so here's the thing. Because it's not what they're thinking.
And they're also not thinking, I want black people
to be slaves again.
I don't want them to be segregated. I don't want Jim. They're not thinking that.
They're not.
When they get on the Trump train.
They're not.
Most of them.
Most of them. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't
we don't know what everybody is thinking. Right.
Okay.
But, yeah. And I think that part of the problem is that doesn't get explained, nor do those who are saying it who really believe, let's make America great again. And they're not thinking about slavery or oppression or black people being, or black and brown people, minorities, period, just being in a place where they're subjugated to, oppressive lifestyle. They're just thinking about some of the benefits that took place then, some of the, I think, the lifestyle, simplicity of life, a lot of things that were not invading, some of them spiritual things that, we did or didn't do because of our faith. But the struggle is there's no consideration for how black and brown people are hearing what's being said.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, it's like they don't even want to talk about that. It's like, well, as if it doesn't exist, as if it shouldn't exist in our minds. And it absolutely exists in our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real.
It is very real. No, it's just as real as a wife who was molested, who's now saying to her husband, I struggle when we get intimate because I was molested. I mean, he can say all day.
Well, that was then.
Yeah, that was then. It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Right,
it's
right.
like, true.
There's still a
But
trauma.
there's still a trauma there. All right. And so what counseling does and, what conversation does is it helps us to become more aware of the other person's experience so we can be more sensitive. Okay. And I think that is at times what is missing in a lot of the, President Trump MAGA, Make America Great movement again.
Is a sensitivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
And then at times, again, sometimes just a dismissal. It's just flat out, well, that's not what it is, so move on. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we did. Well, but that's the feelings it generates.
Yeah. I think that most...
You know what's crazy?
Okay, go ahead.
You know what's crazy? Sorry, I know I'm cutting you off. What's crazy is many Republicans, and I'm not going to say all, but many Republicans would be worried and are worried when Democrats get into office. And a lot of that, I think, is based upon fear. Like emotions.
I mean, all of it.
Like it's
all this whole political.
Yes.
It's all fear-based.
It's all fear-based. They're stirring up your. So
those people are bad, and it's bad for you.
Ruin our families, they're gonna destroy our country, and it's like
doesn't just enter name here, enter party.
Yeah, that's
here.
right. Yes. And so all of that's like you feel all of that, and when the other side is saying no, that's not the case. That's not the case. You still feel that way, and you want us to give credence to your feelings. But then now when there's somebody else saying, well, no, this is how I feel,
right. And
they can give you some receipts of why they feel that way. When the receipts are dismissed because those same receipts don't make you feel that way.
Right.
At that moment, then you are acting, you can be dismissive and insensitive.
Which is really unchristian. I mean, we're not talking about all Christians in here, but we are followers of Jesus, and most of our listeners are. We don't have permission to be dismissive.
Right. As
or
Christians,
unfeeling.
We're supposed to be sensitive.
Yes.
We're supposed to consider our brother as greater than ourselves. Yes. We're supposed to grieve when our brother is grieving.
So it should matter to me.
It should matter to you as my brother in Christ if I'm hurting.
Even if I don't agree.
Absolutely.
You think of the story of the Good Samaritan, right? The guy on the side of the road. The Samaritan who helped him didn't have the liberty or didn't take the privilege of trying to, evaluate if he was really hurt.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think you're all right. You'll be okay. No. You seem to be hurting. You seem to be in need. I'm going to help you.
Yes.
I'm going to use my resource to help you get what you need to be better. I think that's an instructive story.
Absolutely.
Again, if there are people grieving, it's not for us to tell them they're not. No,
right.
you're not. You're not sad. What? What I was going to say is I feel like any person who stops to be thoughtful can admit, even if they are, the biggest Trump supporter, that the man can come off as very insensitive. That's not like inferring a whole lot, is it? I mean, I don't feel like I'm reading between the. He's not even trying to be sensitive.
I'm gonna say I'm sure that there are individuals out there who are not only love their country, but believe in the ideas of the Republican agenda, and even are excited about President Trump. I'm sure that there are those who could say, yes, at times he comes across a certain way that would cause some people to be afraid or worried or concerned.
Right.
But I gotta tell you, the appearance is that whatever he is doing or saying, for the most part, is like, yep, let's follow him. He's right. Because that's what I hear a lot of President Trump supporters say. Now, again, I'm not saying that there aren't those who are going to be a little bit more what I would call balanced, but those who are making the most noise, who I'm, at times, not that I'm going looking, so I'm not looking really hard. I'm just whoever pops up. And I have some very close friends who, even their Facebook pages, it's obvious. You're a Christian, Republican, and Republicans and President Trump, boom, just follow. And so they don't see him at times from what I would call a balanced perspective. They see him through the lens that they want to see him through.
True. So let's talk about that, what you were just saying, because the truth is no group is a monolith. Every individual is actually thinking different. We're not sycophants, just like, I don't think anyone truly is, unless they're just totally not thinking, and that most people are.
Okay.
They may be thinking differently. But anyways, this whole season election season has been wild in terms of like social narrative, like in like social media and stuff. Like on my own feeds, I saw several wild statements from people, and not just one or two, but like, so on one side, someone would say, hey, if you vote for Trump, you are a white supremacist racist bigot.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
Right. Wow.
If you cast your vote.
That's extreme.
People believe that.
Yes.
On the other side, someone would say, you can't be a Christian and vote for Kamala Harris.
Yes. That's extreme too.
What are we doing, fam? Like, really? Like, can we really make these definitive statements about who a person is based on how they cast their vote?
No, we shouldn't. We should not make definitive statements like that. And here's a reality
I
of
can
it.
judge your Christianity based on how you voted.
Oh, I think
not.
I actually think that's a distortion of the gospel.
Or your moral character.
Right. That's a distortion of the gospel. Because the gospel is faith alone in Christ alone. Right. That's what saves us.
Sure.
That's what makes you a Christian.
Right.
And those of us who understand, church history, doctrinal stance, and theology has been passed on, that's one of those solas. Faith alone in Christ alone. That's your salvation.
Sure.
And the whole book of Galatians is written on this entire idea of it's not circumcision, not the law, it's not your works, it's none of these things. And so when we start attaching how you voted to whether or not you're a Christian.
Right. Or even judging your moral character.
Right.
If you want to play both sides
That's
of
right.
that rhetoric,
Reddit. Oh, you
are a racist.
You're a racist.
You are.
Yes. It's like you can't.
Wow.
Those aren't even in the same boat. That doesn't mean that someone who is racist and supremacist wouldn't vote for Trump, President Trump, because they might do that.
But everyone that does is.
Right. Just like non-Christians voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. So there's an element that,
this is
but that doesn't mean that if you voted this way or that way, that's what you are. That's very problematic. But that's also part of the fear.
Yeah.
That's part of what we get fed by our social media outlets. And I know you said that a lot of people are thinking. And man, there was a time where I probably would have given people more credit. But there's a reason why I think the Bible refers to us as sheep. They are some of the dumbest animals.
You're talking about you and me?
They are followers, even off of a cliff. Okay? I remember doing a sermon series on Psalms 23. It talked about how sheep can be so dumb that if they come to a spot in the grass, like in the pasture, and the grass seems greener and plusher, they'll eat there. And they'll come back even when there's no grass there. They'll just keep eating even when it gets dirt there because they remember, it was so good here, which can cause infection.
Like, we should go back there?
So my point being, right, yeah, well, no. My point being is we're likened to sheep because we are very much at times we are led by anyone who's willing to stand up and lead us.
True.
Because the majority of us are followers by nature. I think God gives certain people with the ability to lead, and there are some people who just have the desire to lead, and they start talking, and they can spin a narrative, or they're very charismatic, or they're very persuasive, and then people start following. And so when it comes to politics, I think people are following their party, unfortunately, without much thinking. Which is, so one of the comment was, hey, if you vote for President Trump, you are voting against women's reproductive rights. Like, just as a whole.
That's the one reason. Right. That's the whole thing.
Like, and it's like, I don't know. Granted, there would be some policies he would put in place that would make abortion more challenging. But voting for him doesn't mean that you
can't have a baby now.
You can't have a baby now. You have no reproductive rights. It's like, that was extreme. And so we work in these extremes to fear people, to put people in fear. And people believe it. Yeah. They believe in it. And they keep selling it. Right. So when people will come to my house and say, hey, well, if you vote for, I'm like, that's not totally true. Right. What are you talking about? Right. and then they want to argue. It's like, no, we don't need to argue. That is not totally true. And you should stop saying that because you're lying to people. Right. You're lying to people.
Yeah. It's really deceptive.
It is.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're followers of Jesus. We're trying to talk to followers of Jesus. So, bringing it home, I think it is helpful and right and godly to understand, like, why would some people be afraid? What is this doing? And so to put it into context, like, someone who seems to be lead with maybe not a lot of sensitivity, like a Trump, would make you feel like he's not going to care about those who have experienced oppression, whose a contribution to history has not always been highlighted and sometimes been erased. We got people, I think, alive in the nation who literally experienced Jim Crow and segregation, probably a very small number, but maybe one generation removed. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about that. We're not thinking about that. And as you're talking about, there is still a collective trauma from 50 years ago. Yeah. 60 years. That's not a long time. It's
not.
Like, that's still alive in the soul of people.
And to his credit, sometimes President Trump has played into that. When we think about the New York Five, those young men who were accused of raping that woman and they spent all that time in prison. And at the time that the case came out, it was said by some people that they were guilty. Come to find out, they weren't guilty. And President Trump had put out an ad kind of like for their, for the death penalty for them. Well, now that it has come out that they weren't guilty, they let them out of prison, information was kind of, President Trump still is like, for lack of a better term, I don't owe them an apology. And it's like, well.
See, I don't even know that story, but.
Are you serious?
No, I don't know.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, so they've asked him, like, hey, have you, because, he put out an ad calling for them to receive the death penalty because at that point in time, many thought they were guilty. They weren't. And now we know that. So it's one thing to be able to say, hey, because he said at that time, the Post was put out that they were guilty, so my ad was fine. And it's like, yeah, but now that we know that they weren't guilty.
We have different information.
Yeah, we got more information. Yeah, we got more information. And now we know more of the truth. I mean, isn't any regret? Do you want to apologize? And it's like nothing. So it's almost like, well, hey, man, if you can't admit that you made a mistake, and I give you the benefit of the doubt. You had information that said one thing, which led you to believe it. Sure. I can believe that. Yeah. But now when you get more information, make a different statement.
Right. So it plays into
sometimes fear. He plays into it. Yeah. And I think some of it is his personality. I think President Trump is very much about loyalty. And I think in business that's how business is often run.
Sure.
And that can be scary. How many people go to work and function a certain way because they need their job? Right. I can't lose this job.
Right.
So there are things they're willing to do, conversations they won't have, things that they will take from an employer or a supervisor because I need this job.
Right.
And that's oftentimes how business works. And people get away with it. Now, when it gets brought up, we usually kind of like scrutinize that supervisor or that CEO who, kind of seems to have these, these dictator type attitudes and characteristics.
Right.
And it just, at times, it would appear to many people who look like me as if President Trump is able to do that.
So let me see if I'm reflecting what you're saying.
Okay.
So the idea that if Trump was operating as a CEO, he may make unilateral decisions that benefit, the running of the machine to the detriment of the people in the wake of those decisions.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And that's the fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how business
That's what
is
CEOs
usually run.
do.
That's what CEO. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are the exceptions.
Yeah. Right. Sure.
Companies that care about people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But-
Yeah. Because there are.
But if somebody's goal is the bottom line, the dollar bills, then yes, that's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, gaining understanding of why there's a fear. That's
Yeah.
what we want to understand.
Absolutely.
Right? I think we also have to ask the question, though, what is right for us? You talked about us being sheep. Fine.
You don't like that?
I mean, no, that's offensive, but I mean, it's biblical.
It's
so
very
it's
biblical.
okay. I'll be offended by the Bible.
Well,
it's okay.
me too. I'm a sheep. I'm
but
dumb.
So the point though there is, who are we following? When Jesus talks about us being a shepherd, he says that his sheep know him and they follow him.
That's right.
So ultimately the believer should be listening to the voice of the good shepherd, following the good shepherd, not the voices of fear outside the gates, trying to call their name and make them scared. You know what I mean? Because that's all it is. All the political rhetoric, I don't care who the candidate or the party is, it's fear-based rhetoric. It's like, oh no,
Right.
the sky's falling. And ultimately, if you turn that narrative on its head, is saying, we don't have a good shepherd. He's not taking care of us. If you're a Christian and you respond to fear-based narrative, that's what you're believing. I don't believe Jesus is going to take care of me. I don't believe Jesus is going to lead me to green pastures. That's what I think. And ultimately, our political commitments are so prone to become idolatry.
Good.
Because
Good perspective.
we're letting them dictate our thinking, dictate our acting, dictate how we feel. They're dictating our emotions for us.
Yeah.
Instead of Jesus, the Word of God, dictating to me how I should feel.
Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in to the Pulpit Aside podcast. This episode is to be continued. This conversation was so rich and so good that it got a little long. So stay tuned. We'll put out part 2 in just a little bit. We'll look forward to it with you. In the meantime, do us a favor with this new season. If you could subscribe, whatever platform you're on, leave a review, tell your friends if you love the Pulpit Aside podcast. We appreciate all of our listeners, and we pray that God blesses you. See you soon.